In the previous episode, Meg was just 15 when hunger forced her into a desperate act. In the rain-slick alleys of Whitechapel, she stole a loaf of bread to save her mother and paid the price. Branded a thief, she was sentenced to 7 years transportation. Torn from everything she knew, she was thrown aboard the Henry Wellesley, a convict ship bound for Australia. The voyage was hell, a lice-ridden hold, sickness, storms, cruelty, and worse. One act of kindness came from June, a fellow prisoner with a sharp tongue and a guarded heart. But even June couldn't protect her from everything. When land finally appeared on the horizon, Meg was scarred, silent, and no longer alone. She was carrying the child of the man who had taken everything from her. Now her story continues. Timeless Tales by Anna, Part 2, The Edge of the World. When the HMS Henry Wellesley dropped anchor in Sydney Cove, the sky was already darkening. The evening air was thick with salt and smoke, and the last rays of sunlight bled into the sea like spilled wine. The shoreline rose in a scatter of crooked timber shacks and soot-stained brick cottages, stitched together by dirt roads and the stench of smoke and seawater. A few grand sandstone buildings loomed above the rest, relics of ambition. But most of Sydney looked as if it had been hammered together by hand and hope. Oil lamps flickered from windows, and laundry flapped between warped fence posts. To me, it looked like the edge of the world. We slept one more night aboard, tethered to the dock like cattle waiting for market, and by the time morning came, the sky was a wash of ash and blue. Mist curled around the sandstone cliffs, and the sun burned low behind a curtain of haze. I stood on the deck beside June, my red hair tangled and wild in the wind. My face, though thinner now, still held that defiant spark. Beneath my ribcage, the ache that had taken root was no longer just sorrow, it was a life. "There it is," June muttered, arms crossed tight. "God help us." I clutched my bundle of belongings, blanket, cup, bowl, and most importantly, the only book I had ever owned. I touched the book into my bundle. For when you're lonely, I'd heard those words over and over in my head. Inside, between the first pages, was a dried sprig of lavender from her apron pocket, now pressed flat and scentless, but still mine. We were herded off the Henry Wellesley in lines, the chains rattling as we walked, squinting against the light, blinking like moles after so long below deck. When my boots hit land for the first time in over 4 months, the jolt climbed up my bones, and my legs turned to jelly. The ship groaned behind us, relieved to be rid of its burden. As I shuffled through the crowd of disembarking prisoners, a sailor suddenly grabbed my arm, yanking me back. He peered hard at my face and the fiery red curls escaping my hood. "Oi, Ginger," he sneered, eyeing my hair like it was cursed. "You know what they say? Red hair brings a red sky, and red sky brings death. Ought to be warned before letting one of your kind aboard." "That's so?" I said, squaring my shoulders. "Then maybe it's you who should watch the sky before you board next time." A few women chuckled behind me. I shouldn't have answered. The sound of my voice set off hoots of laughter. "All right and proper, hoity-toity, madam," he yelled, looking at the crowd for encouragement. But the guards were getting restless. He spat near my feet and let me go. It was June who had told me what to say when the time came. "You're a widow now," she had said, crouching low beside me the night before disembarkation. "Lost your husband to illness. Don't tell him you're unmarried, not in your condition. They'll treat you worse than vermin." "A widow?" I'd whispered. She nodded. "If you want any kindness here, girl, you wear your sorrow like armor." So when the officer at the end of the dock looked down at my belly, still barely rounding, "But enough," I said. "My husband passed. Fever, months ago. I didn't look away when I said it. I saw his pen hesitate, just for a moment. That's how you know you've said the right lie. June had taught me that too. They bought it, or at least pretended to have done so, marked something on their paper, and waved me forward. But I knew the truth had teeth. One wrong word, one wrong look, and they'd tear me open. June stayed close as we were marched inland, past sandstone buildings and dirt roads littered with the bustle of this strange, sunburnt colony. Her gray hair was tied back with a strip of cloth, and her steps were even, despite the limp she'd had since the second week aboard. I'd always thought of her as tough, iron-willed, no nonsense. But now I saw something else in her, something quiet and fierce. She wasn't just surviving, she was protecting, and I clung to her like a girl lost in a storm. Eat, sleep, don't cause trouble. She pressed a scrap of bread into my hand. You'll need your strength. I caught her looking off into the hills, eyes gone glassy. I wondered who she saw there and who she'd left behind. We passed low hills and a winding river, and I watched the land shift into something strange and wild. The female factory loomed like a fortress, stone walls, barred windows, and iron gates. The female factory, Parramatta. Inside, the sound hit like a wave. Screams, sobs, coughs, wailing babes. Somewhere, someone was singing a hymn off-key. They processed me in silence. My name is Meg Hawthorne. Age 15. My crime, theft. My pregnancy, obvious. The matron, Mistress Black, face like dried fruit, tongue like vinegar, sneered when she noted it. You'll go with the others, she said, until we decide what to do with your bastard. June stepped forward. She's only a girl. She's a convict, Mistress Black snapped. We were split into separate dormitories, but June found me that night. She slipped me a scrap of bread and a rough blanket. Don't lose that fire, girl, she whispered. It's what's keeping you breathing. I nodded. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my book Ma'am had given me, the only one I owned. Its leather cover was worn smooth, the pages yellowed but full of life. Inside the front cover was Uncle Will's handwriting, careful and elegant. To Margaret Eliza Stewart, may knowledge be your shield and wonder your map. I didn't cry. I read every page over and over. It was a book of herbs and flora, annotated by my uncle, with notes in the margins and sketches of flowers. My uncle had been a botanist, lost 3 years now on an expedition, presumed dead, though Ma'am never believed it. He was the one who taught me to read, to speak carefully, to see the world through the eyes of a botanist. He had filled our small home with stories of the natural world, of plants that healed and ones that killed. There were sketches of flowers, scribbled Latin, pressed petals still clinging to their scent. One drawing caught my breath, a strange, twisting plant I'd never seen. Beneath it, a specimen said to exist in the interior. If I find it, I shall name it after my Meg. I held the book to my chest like it was her, like it was him, like it was the last piece of home I had. A week later, a chaplain came, a thin man with watery eyes and a kind, uncertain voice. If anyone wishes to write home, he said, I can try to see it sent. My hand shot up. I never told him I could read and write. I was just thankful he would write and send a letter to my ma'am. He sat quietly, quill ready, and wrote as I whispered, Dearest ma'am, I am alive. I am safe, though the world is not kind. I carry a piece of it inside me now, and I still don't know if it is sorrow or salvation. I think of you every night. I have Uncle Will's book. It smells like our garden in spring. I read it and pretend I am home. If you are still alive, write back. If not, know that I will always carry your voice with me. Love, your Meg. I don't know if she'll ever receive it, but writing it felt like breathing, like remembering I was still alive. A few days later, they sent me to work for a settler family, the Rutledges. Their cottage was outside of town, all fences and dust. Mrs. Rutledge was sharp as vinegar and twice as sour, her mouth drawn tight like a stitched seam. Her husband barely showed his face. I scrubbed. I hauled water. My belly grew. One morning, I fainted in the garden. "Useless," Mrs. Rutledge sniffed. "You'll have to go back." But then a doctor came, a tall man in a long coat, voice soft as molasses. He found my book. "Where did you get this?" he asked. It was my uncle's, William Hawthorne. He taught me to read. His eyes lit up. "Hawthorne? The botanist? Brilliant man. Presumed lost. You say he was your uncle?" I nodded. He turned the pages gently. "You've got his hand in your notes. Ever thought of copying them? Cataloging?" For a second, I didn't know what to do, whether to thank him or run. No man had spoken to me kindly in months. A tear slid down my cheek as he left. That small act of kindness cracked something open, a sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could still become someone more than what they saw. Needless to say, I was sent back to the female factory the very next day. Days blurred at the factory, stitched together by labor, hunger, and the low murmur of secrets. We scrubbed floors until our knuckles bled, washed linens stiff with blood and birth, and stood in line for food that never filled us. The guards watched with eyes like knives. No one laughed, no one sang. Time frayed like an old thread, unraveling in silence. Some days, I forgot what the sky even looked like. It was there I met Tommy, barely 10, wiry as a broom handle, with quick brown eyes and fingers constantly twitching. He wasn't meant to be there, not really. He'd been picked up with a band of older boys stealing fruit, sentenced to a holding house, but shuffled around when one of the carts broke down. I caught him trying to pinch bread from the kitchens. Instead of ratting him out, I snuck him half of mine. "If you get caught," I said, "just tell him you were following orders. I'll take the blame." He stared at me like he'd never seen a kindness before. Then slowly, he nodded. From that moment on, he followed me everywhere like a shadow. He called me Red when he thought I was being prickly. I didn't mind. It was Tommy who spotted the dog. A scrawny thing with patchy fur and one ear torn, it limped along the outer wall near the laundry yard. No one claimed it. Some tried to chase it off, but it kept coming back, quiet and watchful, like it was studying us before making up its mind. "Looks like it's waiting for someone," Tommy said. "It's smart," I said. "It knows we're all strays." I left scraps out each day, and by the end of the week, the dog came when I called. I named him Bristle, for his fur, for his stubbornness, for the way he growled low and mean when a guard got too close. He was mine, and I was his. Now, when I lay in the dim light with June nearby, Tommy curled up nearby, and Bristle resting his head against the cot leg, I almost believed we were something like a family. Maybe this wasn't the edge of the world after all. Perhaps it was just the place where I had to begin. I dared to open my book and add my notes, my sketches, my voice, scribbled into the margins like roots reaching for soil. My story, finally, was mine to tell. Someday, I thought, someone might open this book and know I existed, not just as a number, but as a girl who lived and dreamed and dared to name the wild things she found. And this was only the beginning. I was ready to let it grow. Meg has reached land, but her journey is only just beginning. In a world that sees her as nothing more than a number, she is daring to grow roots, claim her voice, and find new kin in the unlikeliest places. Stay with her as the story deepens in part 3.